Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnanatimirannasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय. So today we are at text 45. यन्मैथुनादिग्रहमेदि सुखं हि तुच्छं कण्डूयनेन करोरिव दुःखं तृप्यन्ति नेह कृपणा बहु दुःखभाजः कण्डूतिवान् मनुसिजां विषहेत धीरा. Sex life is compared to the rubbing of two hands to relieve an itch. Grihamedis, so-called grihastas, who have no spiritual knowledge, think that this itching is the greatest platform of happiness, although actually it is a source of distress. The kripanas, the fools, who are just the opposite of brahmanas, are not satisfied by repeated sensuous enjoyment. Those who are dhira, however, who are sober and who tolerate this itching, are not subject to the sufferings of fools and rascals. Those who are dhira, however, who are sober and who tolerate this itching, are not subject to the sufferings of fools and rascals. Purport. Materialists think that sexual indulgence is the greatest happiness in this material world, and therefore they make elaborate plans to satisfy their senses, especially the genitals. This is generally found everywhere and specifically found in the Western world, where there are regular arrangements to satisfy sex life in different materialistic comforts of their fathers and grandfathers cannot give up sensational happiness of sexual life. Such persons are described here as kripanas, misers. The human form of life is a great asset, for in this life one can fulfill the goal of existence. Unfortunately, however, because of lack of education and culture, people are victimized by the false happiness of sex life. Prahlada Maharaj therefore advises one not to be misled by this civilization of sense gratification, especially not by sex life. Rather, one should be sober, avoid sense gratification, and be Krishna conscious. The lusty person who is compared to a foolish miser never gets happiness by sense gratification. The influence of material nature is very difficult to surpass. But as stated by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita 7:14, Mam eva e prapadyante maya metam tarantite. If one voluntarily submits to the lotus feet of Krishna, he can be saved very easily. In reference to the low-grade happiness of sex life, Yamunacharya says in this connection, Yada vadimam cheta Krishna padara vinde navanavarasa dhamanudhyatrantumasit tada vadi batanari sangame smaryamane bhavati mukha vikhara sushta nishtivancham nishtivanam cha. Since I've been engaged in the transcendental loving service of Krishna, realizing ever new pleasure in him, whenever I think of sex pleasure, I spit at the thought and my lips curl with distaste. Yamunacharya had formerly been a great king who enjoyed sexual happiness in various ways. But since he later engaged himself in the service of the Lord, he enjoyed spiritual bliss and hated to think of sex life. If sexual thoughts came to him, he would spit with disgust. Yeah, in this connection, I wanted to share a few points that sometimes when we don't have experience of the complications of relationship, essentially, then we only think of what it's so cool. Oh, look at that boy and girl going together. Oh, the feelings of romantic pleasures. It takes over, but we don't think of the consequences and all the headache there is. Because okay, like for a woman to please a man, she has to dress the way he wants. She has to, the hair has to be how he wants. She needs to look the way he wants. And then she needs to sometimes eat what he wants. And he will not allow the woman to go here and there. And there's so many restrictions. I know from, like, say, my married friends who have like a very, let's say, controlling husbands. Then their experience is like, oh, my husband doesn't let me go here. My husband doesn't let me do that. My husband doesn't let me do this. Like that, there is so much restrictions. And then when a woman is not married, of course, she has all these hopes, right? Oh, this, and also for the man, the woman, and to try to keep the woman happy and pleased. And if she's not happy, then house is not peaceful. There's a lot of give and take in a relationship, and sometimes is it worthy? Sometimes people have such difficult relationships, and then they wonder, is it worthy, to put all this? But the important realization for me is that sometimes you have to go through some experiences in order to come to this realization. By just reading this, sometimes we may not find that kind of detachment, but sometimes Krishna exactly puts us in circumstances where we need to experience something. And all this reading we are doing, it's not that you have to like not marry and give up everything, no, but remembering this. So when we are with, say, when you are about to get married and when you are with the partner, that that's not the ultimate cause of your happiness and security, but to know that there is something beyond. But this is necessary for some social stability and emotional focus, like that. But what I want to emphasize is how Krishna puts us through relational experiences that purifies us, that makes us detached naturally from sex life. Sometimes, like, people may be attracted to some experience, but then once they have that experience, they become, like, kind of okay, getting out of the system, getting it out of the system type of thing. We are just I just finished reading text 45. That's and then this is very heavy and very, very, let's say, popular verse, right? The thing about Prabhupada compares how it's so full of misery, actually. And I'm kind of sharing realization how, married people, what is their experience, unmarried people, what is their experience. And there is such a hard work, sex life takes a lot of money. I'm just thinking, like, for a woman, she has to attract the man, or like that, have to keep the man attracted, right? Like some of my Russian friends and all say that if the woman is not physically attractive, she doesn't wear makeup and she doesn't wear fake eyelashes, and so in some cases doesn't have false boobs and stuff, then the man will become attracted to somebody else and he will leave her. So women have to do so much effort to do their hair and the nails and their work out and keep their body in shape, because of the fear that the man will leave them. So I'm just thinking how to come to the natural, it's karma, right? What kind of relation we'll have, but still, to understand this thing is very important. Whatever kind of relation we have, to understand that Krishna will put us in circumstances that we need, and we have to remind ourselves all the time that all the disappointments are actually a good thing. It makes us more and more detached from materialistic pleasures, because we know that it's like the camel which eats that thorn and then he enjoys the blood. He thinks, wow, this thorn is so tasty. That's really basically sex life. So much effort for what? For the chewing of your own blood, like that. Anyway, okay.
So, should we move to the next?
Maunavrata Shrutatapo Dhyayana. That's it? Adhyayana, right? Maunavrato Shruta tapo dhyayana swadharma vyakyaraho japa samadhyaya apavargyaya vargyaha praya param purushate svajitendriyanam varta bhavanti utana vartatu dambikanam. O Supreme Personality of Godhead, there are 10 prescribed methods on the path of liberation: to remain silent, not to speak to anyone, to observe vows, to amass all kinds of Vedic knowledge, to undergo austerities, to study the Vedas and other Vedic literatures, to execute the duties of Varnashram Dharma, to explain the Shastras, to stay in a solitary place, to chant mantras silently, and to be absorbed in trance. These different methods for liberation are generally only a professional practice, are my means of livelihood for those who have not conquered their senses. Because such persons are falsely proud, these procedures may not be successful. Purport. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 6.115, Kechit kevalaya bhaktya vasudeva parayana agham dhunvanti kartsneya niharam iva bhaskaraha. Only a rare person who has adopted complete unalloyed devotional service to Krishna can uproot the weeds of sinful actions with no possibility that they will revive. He can do this simply by discharging devotional service, just as the sun can immediately dissipate fog by its rays. The real purpose of human life is to attain liberation from material entanglement. Such liberation may be achieved by many methods. Tapasa brahmacharyena samena cha damena cha. But all of them more or less depend on tapasya, austerity, which begins with celibacy. Shukadeva Goswami says that those who are Vasudeva Parayana, who have fully surrendered to the lotus feet of Lord Vasudeva, Krishna automatically achieve the results of mauna, silence, vratha, vows, and other such methods simply by discharging devotional service. In other words, these methods are not so powerful. If one takes to devotional service, all of them are very easily performed. Mauna, for example, does not mean that one should just stop speaking. The tongue is meant for speaking, although sometimes to make a big show, a person remains silent. There are many who observe silence some day in a week. Vaishnavas, however, do not observe such silence. Silence means not speaking foolishly. Speakers at assemblies, conferences, and meetings generally speak foolishly like toads. This is described by Srila Rupa Goswami as Vacho Begam. One who wants to say something, he can show himself to be a big orator, but rather than go on speaking nonsense, better to remain silent. This method of silence, therefore, is recommended for persons very attached to speaking nonsense. One who is not a devotee must speak nonsensically because he does not have the power to speak about the glories of Krishna. Thus, whatever he says is influenced by the illusory energy and is compared to the croaking of a frog. One who speaks about the glories of the Lord, however, has no need to be silent. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recommends Kirtaniya Sadahari. One should go on chanting the glories of the Lord 24 hours a day. There is no question of becoming mauna or silent. The 10 processes for liberation or improvement on the path of liberation are not meant for the devotees. Kevalaya Bhaktya. If one simply engages in devotional service to the Lord, all 10 methods of liberation are automatically observed. Prahlada Maharaj's proposal is that such processes may be recommended for Ajitendriya, those who cannot conquer their senses. Devotees, however, already conquered their senses. Sarvopadi vinirmuktam tatparatvena nirmalam. A devotee is already freed from material contamination. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur therefore said, Duttamana tumi ki sera Vaishnava pratishtara tare nirjanera ghare tava hari nama kevala kaitava. There are many who like to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra in a silent, solitary place. But if one is not interested in preaching, talking constantly to the non-devotees, the influence of modes of nature is very difficult to surpass. Therefore, unless one is extremely advanced in Krishna consciousness, one should not imitate Haridas Thakur, who had no other business than chanting the holy names always, 24 hours a day. Prahlad Maharaj does not condemn such a process. He accepts it. But without active service to the Lord, simply by such methods, one generally cannot attain liberation. One cannot attain liberation simply by false pride.
Okay.
Yeah, good points, no? We can't like Maharaj. I mean, like, very relevant to our circumstances. Like Bharat Maharaj, he tried to go away, and why he didn't succeed is because he didn't have association of devotees. Actually, that's what we do in our support groups also. We talk about our emotions, but in connection to Krishna, so that we don't have to like talk with people who may not help us to become more Krishna conscious, but to take responsibility and turn our emotions toward Krishna. रूपे इमे सदस्ति तव वेद सृष्टे विझङ्कुरु इव न चान्यादरूपकस्य युक्ता समक्षम् उभयत्र विचक्षन्ते त्वं योगेन वह्निम् इव दारुषा नान्यातः स्यात्. By authorized Vedic knowledge, one can see that the forms of the cause and effect in the cosmic manifestation belong to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For the cosmic manifestation is His energy. Both cause and effect are nothing but energies of the Lord. Therefore, O my Lord, just as a wise man, by considering cause and effect, can see how fire pervades wood, those engaged in devotional service understand how you are both cause and effect. Purport. As described in previous verses, many so-called students of spiritual understanding follow the 10 different methods known as Mauna Vrata, Shruta Tapo, Dhyana, Swadharma, Vyakya, Raho, Japa, Samadhaya. These may be very attractive, but by following such methods, one cannot actually understand the real cause and effect and the original cause of everything. Janmadasya Yataha. The original source of everything is the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself, Sarva Karana Karanam. This original source of everything is Krishna, the Supreme Ruler. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha. He has his eternal spiritual form. Indeed, he is the root of everything. Bijam Mam Sarva Bhutanam. Whatever manifestation exists there causes the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This cannot be understood by so-called science or by any other hodgepodge method. Haha, hodgepodge method. The Supreme Cause can be understood only by devotional service. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhaktya Mam Abhijanati. Elsewhere in Srimad Bhagavatam 11, 14, 21, the Supreme Godhead personally says, Bhaktya Mam Eka Bhaktyaham Ekaya Grahayaha. One can understand the original cause of all causes, the Supreme Person, only by devotional service, not by show bottle exhibitionism. Ha. Okay, would you like to read a little bit, Ray?
Okay. 7948. Tvam vayuragniravanirviyadambumatra pranindriyani hridayam shidanugrahascha sarvam tameva saguno vidunascha bhumam anyatvadhasti apyamanot pachasa niruktam. O Supreme Lord, you are actually the air, the earth, the fire, sky and water. You are the objects of sense perception, the life airs, the five senses, the mind, consciousness, and false ego. Indeed, you are everything subtle and gross. The material elements in anything expressed either by the words or by the mind are nothing but you. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. This is the all-pervasive conception of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which explains how He spreads everywhere and anywhere. Sarvam Kalau Vida Brahma. Everything is Brahman, the Supreme Brahman, Krishna. Nothing exists without Him, as the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 9:4. Maya datam idam sarvam jagata vyaktam murtina masthani sarvabhutani nachaham tishavastita. I exist everywhere, and everything exists in me. Yet I'm not visible everywhere. The Lord can be visible only through devotional service. Tatra tishtami narada yatra gayanti madbhakta. The Supreme Lord stays only where His devotees chant His glories. Any questions or comments? Yeah, this is a key conception that everything is Krishna, but Krishna, the person, is nothing but his own personal form, his own personal self. It's like the spider. the spider web is not different than the spider because it's the energy of the spider, but at the same time, there is separation from the spider, the form of the spider and the spider web. So similarly, Krishna says that he pervades everything in his unmanifested form, and is there everywhere. At the same time, he's not there at the same time. It's inconceivable, but at the same time, it's very clear. He's there, but he's also beyond. In other words, it's not there like packed in or conditioned or boxed in. And through his energies, he pervades the whole universe. Okay, next.
Do the screen share because sometime I'm.
Yeah. 7949. Ate gunana gunino mahadadayo ye sarve mana prabritaya sahadeva martya adyantavanta urugoya vidan adyantavanta urugaya vidanti hitvam evam vimarishya sudyo viramanti shabda. Neither the three modes of material nature, sattva guna, rajaguna, and tamaguna, nor the predominating deities controlling these three modes, nor the five gross elements, nor the mind, nor the demigods, nor the human beings can understand your lordship, for they are all subjected to birth and annihilation. Considering this, the spiritual advance have taken to devotional service. Such wise men hardly bother with Vedic study. Instead, they engage themselves in practical devotional service. Now, this doesn't mean, obviously, that devotees don't study. The first thing is Shravana and Kirtan. The first thing is the books are the basis. The same thing. The first thing is listening about the Lord. So, by practical devotional service, it doesn't mean not reading Srila Prabhupada books and just being like brutes, only working with the body. That's not the meaning here. So let's see the purport. As stated in several places, Bhakti Mam Abhijanati. Only by devotional service can the Supreme Lord be understood. Intelligent person, the devotee, does not bother much about the practices mentioned to text 46, Onavrata Shruta Tapu Dhyayana Swadharma. After understanding the Supreme Lord through devotional service, the devotees are no longer interested in studies of the Vedas. Indeed, this is confirmed in the Vedas also. The Vedas say, Kim artavayam adhishyamahe, kim artavayam vakshamahe. What is the study of what is the use of studying so many Vedic literatures? What is this use of explaining them different ways? Vayam vakshamahe. No one needs to study any more Vedic literatures, nor does anyone need to discard them by philosophical speculation. Bhagavad Gita 252 also says, Yadate moha kalilam buddhivyati darishati tadagantasi nirvedam shrutasya cha. When one understands the Supreme Personality of God by executing devotional service, one ceases the practice of studying the Vedic literature. Elsewhere it is said, Haradito yadi haris, haradito yadi haris tapasyatata kim. If one can understand the Supreme Personality of God and engage in his service, there is no more need of severe austerities, penances, and so on. However, after performing severe austerity and penances, one does not understand the Supreme Personality of God, as such practices are useless. So this we need to understand very clearly, because some devotees may misunderstand that, oh, so reading books is not important. He specifically talks about Vedas. Vedas meaning even Narada Muni tells Vyasadeva, okay, you compiled the Vedas and everything, but you did not explain directly Krishna so clearly. So you need to explain the Srimad Bhagavatam. So here it says, basically the meaning is, now that we have Bhagavad Gita, which is the words, direct words of the Lord, and we have Bhagavatam, which is a fantastic, marvelous explanation about the Lord, his nature, his leelas, and so on, then why we need to see the Vedas, which are very often are indirect. That's the meaning, not that we don't study the Vedas anymore. Okay. $7,950. Taterata manamastuti karma puja karma smritir charanayo shravanastakatayam sevayatva viniti shadangaya kim bhaktim jana paramahamsa gatu labeta. Therefore, O Supreme Personality of God, the best of all persons to whom prayers are offered, I offer my respectful obeisance unto you, because without rendering 6 kinds of devotional service unto you, offering prayers, dedicate all the results of activities, worshiping you, working on your behalf, always remembering your lotus feet and hearing about your glories, who can achieve that which is meant for the Paramahamsas? The Vedas enjoy Naya Atma Pravachanena Labhyu Namidaya Navaruna Shrutena. One cannot understand the Supreme Personality of God simply by studying the Vedas and offering prayers. Only by the grace of the Supreme Lord can one understand him. The process of understanding the Lord, therefore, is bhakti. Without bhakti, simply following the Vedic injunctions to understand the absolute truth would not be helpful at all. The process of bhakti is understood by the Paramahamsa, one who has accepted the essence of everything. The results of bhakti are reserved for such a Paramahamsa, and this stage cannot be obtained by any Vedic process other than devotional service. Other processes, such as jnana and yoga, can be successful only when mixed with bhakti. When we speak of jnana yoga, karma yoga, and dhyana yoga, the word yoga indicates bhakti. This is a very nice definition. We'll talk about that later. Bhakti yoga or buddhi yoga, executed with intelligence, full knowledge, is the only successful method for going back home, back to God. If one wants to be liberated from the pangs of material existence, he should take to devotional service for quick attainment of this goal. So let's speak a moment about this. When we speak of jnana yoga, karma yoga, and dhyana yoga, the word yoga indicates bhakti. So this is a fantastic definition, I find, because in other words, yoga means yunjam, uniting. So simply, obviously, jnana means somebody speculating on the Upanishad, trying to understand. It's really not connecting, unless there is some connection to bhakti. Means you are obeying, at least obeying. Just say, okay, you studied jnana, you studied the scriptures. There is some connection with Krishna, because the scriptures come from Krishna, and all the scriptures are meant to understand Krishna. They are meant. So if somebody studies the Veda even without knowing that Krishna is the source and goal, still there's some obedience. Then therefore you can call it yoga. Karma yoga, same. If you're doing certain activities of the Vedas, that obedience to the statements of the Lord, then that's yoga. And especially, of course, if you offer that activity, it's some, if you have to offer, it offers. And so dhyana yoga, meditation, or yoga, obviously, again, if he's obedient, I would say this obedience is essential. So people who practice all this yoga, there is some obedience. Like dhyana yoga, you see in the Bhagavad Gita is described dhyana yoga in the 6th chapter. You go sit down in a holy place, then in a remote place, forest, and then close your eyes, almost close your eyes, and meditate on pranayama and so on. So there is a function of serving Krishna, even if they don't know. There's this function. So that's what gives you this yoga. Otherwise, dhyana, it's like so many people do dhyana, like Zen Buddhists do meditation. Dhyana means fixing the mind, right? I mean, meditating, they meditate on stones or things like that. But it's not yoga because it's just, okay, it's like Mauna Vrata. If you just keep silent, just keeping silent, okay, better than just talking nonsense all day or saying something crazy. But in itself, it's not yoga in itself, unless, of course, one gets it from the Lord. So I really like this. Okay, so that was the last prayer. So it was like the conclusion. Bhakti Janaha Paramahamsa Gatu Labeta. So without rendering the 6 kinds of devotional service to you, prayers, dedicating the fruits of action, worshiping, working for you, always remember your lotus feet, to hear your glories, then who can achieve the stage of the Paramahamsa, meaning perfection? So that's the conclusion, no, of Prahlada Maharaj. So now the last 5 verses of this chapter. Narada Vacha, remember this is always the discussion between Narada and Yudhishthira. It started by Yudhishthira asking about the fallen Jaya and Vijay, and now Jaya and Vijay are gone, at least for this part. No, Hiranyaksha is gone, Hiranyakashipu was gone. So let's see. So Narada Vacha tavat varnita guno bhakti bhaktena nirgunaha praradham pranatam prito yatha manyur abhashata. The great sage Narada said, thus Lord Nrisimhadeva was pacified by the devotee Prahlada Maharaj with prayers offered from the transcendental platform. The Lord gave up his anger and being very kind to Prahlad, was offering prostrated obeisances. He spoke as follows. Now Nrisimhadeva speaks. So far, he only roared purple. The word nirguna is important. The Mayavadi philosophers accept the absolute truth as nirguna or nirakara. The word nirguna refers to one who possesses no material qualities. The Lord, being full of spiritual qualities, gave up all his anger and spoke to Prahlad. You can imagine the deep voice of Nrisimhadeva. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Prarada Bhadra Bhadram Te Pritoham Te Surottama Varam Vrinishva Bhimatam Kamapurosmi Aham Nranam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, my dear Prahlad, most gentle one, best of the family of the Suras, all good fortune unto you. I am very much pleased with you. It is my pastime to fulfill the desire of all living beings, and therefore you may ask from me any benediction that you desire to be fulfilled. Purport by Srila Prabhupada, the Supreme Personality of God that is known as Bhakta Vatsala, Supreme Personality was very much affectionate to his devotees. It is not very extraordinary that the Lord offered his devotee all benediction. The Supreme Personality of God has said, in effect, I fulfill the desires of everyone. Since you are my devotee, whatever you want for yourself will naturally be given. But if you pray for anyone else, the prayer also will be fulfilled. Thus, if we approach the Supreme Lord or his devotee, or if we are blessed by a devotee, naturally, we will automatically achieve the benediction of the Supreme Lord. Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasadaha. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that if one pleases the Vaishnava spiritual master, all of one's desires will be fulfilled. Okay? So there is an offer of Varam, benediction. Let's see what happened next. Nrisimhadeva continue talking. Mama prinata ayusman darshanam durlabhami me drushtva na punarjantur atmanam taptum arati. My dear Prahlada, you may live a long time. One cannot appreciate or understand me without pleasing me. But one who has seen or pleased me has nothing more for which to lament for his own satisfaction. One cannot be happy under any circumstances unless one pleases the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Very strong sentence. One cannot be happy under any circumstances unless one pleases the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But one who has learned how to please the Supreme Lord need no longer lament for his material condition. Prinanti yatamam dhira sarva. Prinanti yatamam dhira sarva bhavena sadava shreyas kama mahabhaga sarvasam ashisham patim. My dear Prahlad, you are very fortunate. Please know from me that those who are very wise and highly elevated try to please me in all different modes of mellows, for I am the only person who can fulfill all the desires of everyone. Purport by Srila Prabhupada, the words dhira, sarva, bhavana do not mean in whichever way you like. Bhava is the preliminary condition of love of God. Atasaktistatu bhavas tata prema vyudhanshati sadaka namayam premna paradhur bhave bhavet kramaha. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.4.16. The bhava stage is the final division before one reaches love of Godhead. The word sarva bhava means that one can love the Supreme Personality of Godhead in different transcendental modes of mellows, beginning with Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, Madhurya. In the Shanta stage, one who is on the border of loving service to the Lord, love on the border because may not be practically engaged. Pure love of God in the Shanta stage, one is on the border of loving service to the Lord. Pure love of God that begins from Dasya and develops to Sakya, Vatsalya, and then Madhurya. Still, in any of these five mellows, one can render loving service to the Supreme Lord. Since our main business is to love the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can render service from any of the above-mentioned platforms of love. So sarva bhava doesn't mean just any attitudes, but sarva bhavena in the synonym, in all respect, in different modes of devotional service. So there are certain parameters, there are certain boundaries, there are certain coordinates. It's not this one can just do whatever he wants and say, okay, this is it's not yatomat tatopat. It's not in that sense. Sarvabhavana means in any form of mood or flavor, spirit of devotional service, authorized devotional service. Text 55. Shri Narada Vacha Evam pralobhyamanopi bharairloka pralobhanai ekantitvat bhagavati naichatan asurottama. Ramuni said, Prahlada Maharaj was the best person in the family of Asuras who always aspired for material happiness. Nonetheless, although allured by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who offered him all benedictions for material happiness, because of his unalloyed Krishna consciousness, he did not want to take any material benefit for sense gratification. Purport Srila Prabhupada. Pure devotees like Prahlada Maharaj and Dhruva Maharaj do not aspire for any material benefit at any stage of devotional service. When the Lord was present before Dhruva Maharaj, Dhruva did not want to take any material benefit from the Lord. Swamin kritartosmin varam nayache. As a pure devotee could not ask the Lord for any material benefit. In this regard, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed us, Nadanam najanam nasundarim kavitam va jagadisha kamaye mama jamani jamanishvare bhavatad bhakti ahaitu kitvai. O my Lord Jagadish, I do not pray for benedictions to which to achieve material wealth, popularity, or beauty. My only desire is to serve you. Kindly engage me in the service of the servant of your servant. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purpose of the 7th canto, 9th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavata, entitled Prahlada pacifies Lord Nrisimhadeva with prayers.
Aye.
So, what should we do?
Maybe you can summarize. You can go back to the texts, just the texts.
Well, I mean, there is this whole thing. It's see, we are chapter 9. We have 6 more chapters for this canto. Prahlada pacify Lord Nrisimhadeva with prayers is basically so the first. It is said that by Yoga Maya, even Lakshmi Devi was not feeling to go near, and then Lord Brahma said, "Okay, you go to Prahlada Maharaj," and then Nrisimhadeva put the hand on Prahlada's head. Okay, so there's this scene, and then it says here, 7, Prahlada Maharaj fixed his mind and sight upon Lord Nrisimhadeva with full attention, complete trance. So then from text 8 to text 50. So it's like 43 prayers, 42 verses of prayers. Very, very, very solid. Then the conclusion, and then Nrisimhadeva asked for, what benedictions do you want? And then Narada Muni says that he did not accept any benediction. I think we could read the summary of the next verse, Huh?
Okay, I can do it.
Okay. Of the next chapter, I mean.
Yeah.
So,
Prahlad, the best among exalted devotees. This chapter describes how the Supreme Personality of Godhead Nrisimhadeva appeared after pleasing Prahlad Maharaj. It also describes a benediction given by Lord Shiva. Sorry, did I say disappeared or did I say appeared? I think I said appeared. Sorry, disappeared. Lord Nrisimhadeva wanted to bestow benedictions upon Prahlad Maharaj one after another. But Prahlad Maharaj, thinking them impediments on the path of spiritual progress, did not accept any of them. Instead, he fully surrendered at the Lord's lotus feet. He said, if anyone engaged in the devotional service of the Lord prays for personal sense gratification, he cannot be called a pure devotee or even a devotee. He may be called only a merchant engaged in the business of give and take. Similarly, a master who wants to please his servant after taking personal service from him is also not a real master. Prahlad Maharaj therefore did not ask anything from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Rather, he said that if the Lord wanted to give him a benediction, he wanted the Lord to assure him that he would never be induced to take any benedictions for the sake of material desires. Exchanges of devotional service for lusty desires are always very prominent. As soon as lusty desire awakens, one's senses, mind, life, soul, religious principles, patience, intelligence, shyness, beauty, strength, memory, and truthfulness are all vanquished. One can render unalloyed devotional service only when there are no material desires in one's mind. The Supreme Personality of Godhead was greatly pleased with Prahlad Maharaj for his unalloyed devotion. Yet the Lord provided him with one material benediction, that he would be perfectly happy in this world and live his next life in Vaikuntha. Wow. The Lord gave him the benediction that he would be the king of this material world until the end of Manvantara, millennium, and that although in this material world he would have the facility to hear the glories of the Lord and depend fully on the Lord, performing service to him in uncontaminated bhakti yoga. The Lord advised Prahlad to perform sacrifices through bhakti yoga, for this is the duty of a king. Then Lord Brahma, who was also present, offered many prayers.
no. You skipped the paragraph.
Prahlad Maharaj accepted whatever the Lord had offered him, and he prayed for the Lord to deliver his father. In response to this prayer, the Lord assured him that in the family of such a pure devotee as he, not only the devotee's father, but his forefathers for 21 generations are liberated. The Lord also asked Prahlad to perform the ritualistic ceremonies appropriate after his father's death. Then Lord Brahma, who was also present, offered many prayers to the Lord, expressing his obligation to the Lord for having offered benedictions to Prahlad Maharaj. The Lord advised Lord Brahma not to offer benedictions to asuras as he had to Hiranyakashipu, for such benedictions indulged them. Then Lord Nrisimhadeva disappeared. On that day, Prahlad Maharaj was installed on the throne of the world by Lord Brahma and Shukracharya. Thus, Narad Muni described the character of Prahlad Maharaj for Yudhishthir Maharaj. And he further described the killing of Ravana by Lord Ramachandra and killing of Shishupala and Dantavakra in Dwapara Yuga. Shishupala, of course, had merged into the existence of the Lord and thus achieved Sayujya Mukti. Narad Muni praised Yudhishthir Maharaj because the Supreme Lord Krishna was the greatest well-wisher and friend of the Pandavas and almost always stayed in their house. Thus, the fortune of the Pandavas was greater than that of Prahlad Maharaj. Oh, wow. Later, Narad Muni described how the demon Maya Danava constructed Tripura for the demons, who became very powerful and defeated the demons. Because of this defeat, Lord Rudra, Shiva, dismantled Tripura. Thus, he became famous as Tripurari. For this, Rudra is very much appreciated and worshipped by the demigods. This narration occurs at the end of the chapter.
Okay, so what do you propose?
We end here.
We end here. So you want to announce the plan, the basic plan?
Yeah, I have already announced in the group that From tomorrow, we are taking a break until the 23rd.
At least the 23rd, right? Let's see.
At least. I said we will resume after 23rd because we are
Or
almost.
on 23rd. Let's see. Depends when you come here also.
Yeah, I said parikrama break. Many devotees are going and we are going. So.
Okay, so we close here.
Parantarat Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Thank you, Ashka.
Jai.